You're listening to ShipFam. On today's episode, Luke and I discuss all the ways app dev can be unintuitive and software engineers can be bad at predicting user behavior. We also share a lot of tips and tricks we've learned along the way that have surprised us. Be sure to review and follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and to follow us on Twitter at KCCRogers and at Luke_Pagetti.
I noticed on Twitter that a lot of people, and the two names that come to mind are Liz and Florian, have recently been talking about paywall and onboarding. I think Liz straight up asked, like, why do people convert in a paywall in onboarding? And then Florian essentially said, hey, everybody, I was wrong. Paywall and onboarding is king. Yeah. And you and I have both gone through this exact same arc, which I feel like I can describe as you start out as like kind of like a newbie idealist where you're thinking like you're going to build a product that's really nice, people are going to get excited about it, they're going to keep coming back, and they're going to eventually convert in like a freemium tier, and you're going to make money because you've built a great product. And I've just found that the monetization structure of small mobile apps like are not like that at all, basically.
Yeah, I think because we're engineers, we tend to have a similar way of thinking. And when you or I are approaching a purchase, I think we're typically going to approach it from a frame of like, okay, let's break down the comparables, break down what kind of value we're going to get out of this, et cetera, marginal benefit, marginal cost. Is this worth it? Yes, no. Let's evaluate this over a period of time, et cetera. And just honestly, that's not how real human beings think. And I think engineers can forget. I mean, no offense to us. I think we're doing this in a good way. But I think we really forget how different the ordinary person approaches these kinds of problems, like a purchase.
And irrational too. Like most purchases are irrational purchases, right? Like I'll give you an example. You know, I'm trying to lose some weight right now. Megan went and bought like a quart of ice cream. That quart of ice cream is not going to do anything positive for her or me, right? That is by definition an irrational purchase. Right. But we enjoyed it. So like it's a form of entertainment. Right. So I don't know. These things are always way more fuzzy than, you know, not everything is a tool. And even something that is a tool, people aren't necessarily buying it. You know, they're not thinking about it as a tool. Sometimes they're thinking about it as an experience. Sometimes they're thinking about it as, you know, wanting to be part of something that's growing and experiencing that. So there's so many different ways that people experience purchasing mobile apps.
Yeah. And I think like paywall on first app open is similar to putting a quart of ice cream in the highest visibility part of the supermarket. And I think in all these things, we're going to keep coming back to grug brain. I love that expression you use a lot. Honestly, just grug braining it, I found works really well for monetization. When you put the paywall in your onboarding, you're putting it in front of the most possible users, because you're putting that at literally the top of the funnel. Well, depending on where in the onboarding, it could be a bit later, but it's basically very, very top of funnel. One thing I want to try that I saw recommended in a Twitter thread a while back was your onboarding flow should be paywall, all your like welcome steps to get the user hyped about the app. And then if they didn't already convert on the first paywall again. Because
I can actually see that working, honestly. No, it's funny because I have an app that has it does not have an onboarding flow at all. Literally, the app opens and it shows a paywall. And when I tell people this, they think I'm like insane. But that paywall like converts actually really well. But I have a problem where there are people who drop off that paywall, right? So I can see a situation where you show the paywall first thing, then there's a short onboarding, and then at the end of onboarding, if they didn't convert, you show them maybe even a separate paywall that has like a limited time offer on it. Like that to me feels like a slamming way to convert fresh downloads.
Yeah, you know what? Now that we're talking about this, I got to try this for Dribble because it's been in the back of my head and I just haven't done it yet. But I think
I'm literally going to do this on my apps after I get off this. Like it feels like a total banger. Like it just checks all the grug brain boxes. And when we say grug brain, I want to be clear about this. It's like if you want to make more sales, show the paywall more. That's like the grug brain version of this. It's like you want more sales, show more paywalls. Like it's literally that simple.
Yeah. I mean, it's similar to the like midwit Jedi meme The guy
Yeah.
who's just starting is like, hey, I'm just going to do the dumb thing. And then the guy who's in the middle is overthinking it. And then you come back to, wait, the dumb thing's a banger. Just do the dumb thing. But of
Yeah,
course, you do
exactly.
the dumb thing with a bit more intelligence. You can be a
Right,
smart
right,
bro.
right. Well, I
Yeah, and I
remember
think,
when you guys just started with Dribble, you had just added ads. And I
yeah.
remember I kept sending you guys like the midwit meme with like the grog brain, and I just say like show more ads.
Yeah,
And it's like
yeah,
every
yeah,
time you guys talked
yeah,
about revenue, I just be like show more
yeah,
ads, show
yeah,
more
yeah,
ads.
yeah. Yeah,
And
it's a
like of
great
course you'll
segue.
hit you'll eventually hit saturation, right? Like you
Yeah,
can't go infinitely with that stuff. If you show a
yeah,
paywall 50 times, like people are going to leave. But I think it's surprising to new indie devs, new mobile devs, like how much you have to do before you hit saturation. Like
yeah,
people are pretty elastic in this process is what I'm trying
yeah.
to say.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a good transition. We talked about paywall and onboarding. Another one is just user tolerance, as you're saying. User tolerance is often much higher than you'd expect, both on pricing and ads and on how many times you show the paywall. For example, with Dribble on ads, we showed you one ad, I think it was like every 4 games or something. And that
Yeah.
translated to something like one ad per every like 5 to 8 minutes. And in response to you and our poor revenue numbers, we're like, okay, we'll try a few more ads. Okay, we'll try a few more ads. And we've got this all set up via Firebase remote config. And I think that's the smart way to be a grug is remote config it and have like not crazy smart galaxy brain analytics, but basic analytics.
Yeah.
And we just kept seeing revenue go up, and retention was holding steady, reviews were holding steady. We went from one ad every 5 to 10 minutes to one ad every like 1 to 2 minutes, depending on play style. And we were retaining during that time the exact same retention. It was something like 38% D1, which is not the best, but that's pretty darn strong. And then a
Mhm.
4.9 average rating on the App Store. Horrible on
Yeah.
Android Store, but like, I don't know, 4.2 on Android Store, but that's just because Android users are dicks.
Yeah, no, actually, you brought up something I want to touch on just super quick. I have gotten rid of all of my remote configs except for basically like a Boolean true false. And just think of it as like either A or B. But what I do is instead of doing it in remote config now, I do it actually in Revenue Cat. So I have two offerings and they have the exact same products. They have the exact same paywall, right? And then I use that as my A/B switch, and that's how I'm testing actual big changes to see how they drive revenue. So if I want to like try a new onboarding flow, then I will do that through the Revenue Cat experiments. And the reason I do that is because they have really granular data on retention by product. They have granular data on how much revenue is coming in, and just the stats you get from the Revenue Cat experiments is like 1,000 times better than what you get out of all these other A/B testing platforms. But it's funny because I'm actually using the Revenue Cat experiment for something that it's not intended for. It's intended for like trying different offerings, and I'm literally
Yeah.
using it as like a true false flag for like this user path or that user path, and then I can see immediately what it's doing for actual cash flow.
Nice, nice. I mean, we're getting pretty deep into a side territory, but I'm pretty revenue cat to the moon here.
Okay, you want to talk about hard versus soft paywall?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. I mean, that comes from like user tolerance and also just, hey, if you force the user to pay if they want to use the app, you'll get a surprising amount of conversions. Why don't you tell us how that went with your app? I know you've been experimenting with this.
Yeah, so I experimented with hard versus soft paywall, and again, what I did is in Revenue Cat, I just created an experiment. You know, one has hard equals false, one has hard equals true in the actual parameters because you can add them to your offerings. And then in the actual code, because I did not want to spend time building my own custom paywalls, the hard paywall is the most grug brain version of this, where when you close the paywall, it will just reopen it if hard is true. Like that's literally all it is.
Yep.
And when I told people that I was doing a hard versus soft paywall, there's a couple of really weird misconceptions that people have. I have heard multiple people say that this is not aligned with Apple TOS. And I just don't understand that at all, because there are so many apps out there, very famous, popular apps that have hard paywalls. And I have never, like, Apple's never given me a hard time for having a hard paywall.
Yeah.
So I don't know where people are getting this, but I've heard like industry leaders even say this. Like people who I feel like I'm going to say should know better, although I don't really know how to phrase that because it's just like so glaringly obvious that this is a common pattern.
Yep. No, Steve from AppMasters talked with us about this. I don't know if you remember that. He was saying they accidentally shipped a hard paywall. It was literally an accident. They somehow broke the skip button, and then they saw a huge boost in conversions.
Sales, yeah.
Yeah. The sales went way up. And their engineers were like, oh man, we're going to have to wind this back and lose all these sales because this isn't allowed. And I don't know what the exact resolution on Steve's side was. I believe they found a way to keep doing it. But my opinion is Apple's terms of service are what Apple will let you ship. And if Apple lets you ship it, I don't care what the text says, and I'm not even going to bother reading it. I never read that.
That's literally it. The other thing I'll say here is there's a rumor that you can only have a hard paywall if there's a tier with a trial. So hard paywall, okay with a trial, not okay with that one. I don't know if that's true, but I can tell you that all my apps have trials because we'll talk about this later, but you really need to optimize for trial starts if you want to make money. And in order to have trial starts, you need a trial. So that's basically that in a nutshell. The other thing is people always get concerned about bad reviews. And in my app that I was testing this on, I only got one bad review, but it actually wasn't about the hard versus soft paywall thing. Interestingly enough, it was about split testing pricing. So what happened with that person is they opened up the app on their iPhone and it had a different price than when they opened it up on their iPad. And they thought that I was charging more for the iPad version because they don't know that like split testing the app is a thing. Yeah. And so then they gave me a bad review for that. I don't know if RevenueCat has tools to resolve this, especially because this app does not have authentication. So there's no way to my knowledge, there's no way to basically say these two devices are the same user as far as RevenueCat is concerned. Yeah. But it's just something that I thought that I ran into. If I were building a product like RevenueCat, I'd be tempted to do granularity based on something to do with approximate geolocation and try to get some sort of granularity there so that, multiple people in the household should have a reasonable expectation of seeing the same price. But I think that's way too galaxy brain for these platforms. It's like something that we can think about as engineers, but honestly, it's probably too galaxy brain. But I've just never seen a bad review from hard paywall. I think what happens is people see the hard paywall and they either convert or they don't, and that's the end of it. That's been my experience anyway.
Yeah, and
I've had like 500 people go through a hard paywall, so I feel like pretty confident that I would have seen some sort of backlash at 500 people.
Yeah, I want to hear how testing, let's call it like a semi-hard paywall, goes. So show them the paywall once, then show them the onboarding flow, then show them the paywall again, but let them skip. So we've got really a three-way test here. You've kind of already verified hard paywall beats soft paywall. But what
and then
about
there's a third level. Yeah. And then there's a third level too, which is when the person goes to delete the app, then in app actions, you show something that says deleting the app, like we have an offer for you, and you click on that, and then it's like a third paywall with an even lower price. You just go right down the funnel and you just try to catch them at every single jumping off point, basically.
Yep. I gotta hit that in-app actions trick just to explain this to the audience because it's kind of a counterintuitive trick. When the user goes to uninstall your app, they're long pressing on the icon on iOS, and you can put in-app actions in that long press menu. So that is like the perfect opportunity to try to reel them back in with that, hey, why don't you just contact support, or here's a discount code, etc. This is like a brilliant hack to get the user right at the point they were about to deconvert. It's super, super smart. I don't know who came up with that one, but that one went viral like
it's genius,
3 months ago. Super clever, and embarrassingly, I haven't tried it yet, but I've really wanted to get to it.
And if I'm honest with you, every single one of those Zoom or social apps that are just printing money that I've seen have this, right?
Yeah.
So I did like a little audit on like 3 or 4 of these, and they all had that exact same flow. Okay, the
Yeah,
next thing I want to talk about is people say that hard paywalls will have lower conversion rate. And when I say conversion rate, I mean on trial. So
mhm.
people expect there to be a higher conversion rate to start a trial, but they expect the actual convert to paying rate after that to be lower. And in my experience, that's just not true. So if you have, for example, like a 20% start, or we'll use more reasonable numbers. If you have like a 10% start on soft and a 20% start on hard, you still have a 50% to convert on both of them. So you're just getting double. It's not like 50% and then 30%. It's like 50% and 50%. So that's what I've seen personally. And this gets back to this idea that if you want revenue in these apps, then you're just optimizing for trial starts. Like anything you can think of to get people to start a trial, whether it's a hard paywall, or I've heard people have really good success with the trial start notifications. That's another thing you can do. But just anything you can do to inspire people to start a trial is a
Yeah.
big deal here.
Though, as a slight counterpoint, I've actually found trial plus yearly to perform really badly for dribble game. And I think that's some context here to watch out for is as we're talking about all this stuff, this is from our experience. And I think that there actually can be a lot of differentiation from different markets with different consumers. So dribble is games, and I suspect games can behave a fair amount different. We found our trial conversion to be something like 3%, and that's pretty rough. And we actually were getting a really high refund rate too. We are getting a lot of complaints to our support. I think it may actually be a bug on Revenue Cat or Apple or something, but our customers kept complaining, hey, got charged even though I canceled. I assumed it was just people being whiny who didn't want to spend the money that they had agreed to pay and they didn't cancel. But I checked in Revenue Cat, and sure enough, they were right. There were cancellation events about an hour to like 4 hours leading up to the charge. And then they got charged anyway, which maybe is a race condition or something on Apple's part. But they were requesting refunds from us, and I had to redirect them to Apple because Apple doesn't let us manage refunds. And I've heard that really hurts ASO too. And then to top it all off, so we're getting this really bad refund rate that makes us look bad, makes me feel bad, and probably hurts our ASO. I ran an A/B test where I replaced our lineup. So let me go over the lineup. We've got a 24-hour pass non-recurring. We've got a monthly pass recurring. And then we've got yearly with a 7-day free trial. I didn't get around to lowering the trial length. That trial length is way too long, but that's kind of an aside. I compared that to the exact same lineup, but swapping out yearly with trial instead for weekly. And weekly is something like 30% more expensive on a monthly basis, but the top line number is low. And this comes back to Grug Brain. I even put a giant red banner over it that said low payments. And it's technically more expensive, but you put low payments, and that's true. It is low payments, and the price looks lower. And people have been eating that up. On that A/B test, the weekly low payments lineup outperformed our yearly trial lineup
Yeah.
by 50%. That's 50% more revenue, which is just absolutely killer.
So my take on this is if you have an app where you can get people to do weekly, it's like a money printer. The amount of money you can get out of weekly is just insane. The other thing I'll say too here is that kind of the theme of this episode was engineers think they know everything before they start building these flows. And the answer is just that they don't. And so what I would say is just treat it more like a scientist where you are treating it like a black box, because every market's going to be different. Every app's going to be different, right? And it's just impossible to predict everything. There are trends here that like you can try to explain away like I am now based on my experience. But really like the important thing is to run a couple tests. But also I think the big thing is to just not to be afraid of running these tests. Like I think there are people who are actually afraid to run a hard paywall in their app because they're afraid that like something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you can literally just set up like a 50-50 A/B split on hard versus soft paywall in Revenue Cat and just watch the money come in and look at the stats and then, adjust it based on what you want. Like in my case, I'm having great success with the hard paywall. I have concerns that it will, reduce organic growth of the app. But what I can do is I can just dial that. Right. So
Yeah.
I can right now it started at 50-50 hard soft. It increased my revenue quite a bit. I just recently dialed it up to 75/25, so now it's 75% hard paywall. And then if I go to make like a big change and I want to do a big marketing push, during that marketing push, I'll probably drop it down to 100% soft paywall while I'm doing that marketing push, just to try to, and the reason for that would be to try to level up in the App Store rankings, so that once I've leveled up, then I can switch it back to a hard paywall and start printing money.
Yeah,
so like
super
this
smart.
is all stuff that you just like, it's just that you're just building these dials, these gas pedals and brakes, on this app to control it, to make it do what you need it to do.
Yeah, and that's actually, it's a bit of a different angle, but this is one way that I see people's intuition fail. And I would describe it as the difference between face value thinking and systemic thinking. The face value thinker is like, okay, let's use in-app actions as our example. The person who takes things at face value is like, okay, in-app actions is for my in-app actions. I don't really have any in-app actions, so I'm not going to use that feature. The systemic thinker is like, I don't care what in-app actions is in theory, in some idealistic world, what that is intended to do. I'm going to look at what it actually does in practice. And what it actually does in practice is it is one of the most valuable pieces of real estate when a user is deconverted. So what can you do with that piece of real estate? And I think across all these different applications, switching from what is the ideal intent of this scenario, this feature, this product, and instead going into what real estate does this provide? What leverage does this give me? And how can I maximize that leverage?
Yeah, exactly. I heard this really great quote from Jerry Seinfeld. I don't know if he's been canceled for any reason or not, but I'll use it anyway. He basically says that the goal of life is to like feel creative, and the only time you can really feel creative is when you feel like you're getting away with something. And so I like apply that to building apps, where if I think of an idea and I'm like, oh my God, this is either hilarious or insane, and if this works, I'll really feel like I'm getting away with something, then I usually know that I'm on to something worth trying.
Yeah, and I think if you can even bring that to the user too, in a way that they feel like they get in on it with you, that's really fun. Yeah, and that really works. Like I found for game ideas, for Dribble Game, the game ideas that have the most legs are the ones that make somebody just crack up laughing when they hear the elevator pitch or when they first see a single screenshot. It's like, you don't even need to be the target demographic. When you see a screenshot or you hear the elevator pitch, you're like, okay, that's ridiculous. I get it immediately, and it's hilarious and stupid, and I love it.
Yeah, this reminds me of Stompers. We'll do like a really quick shout out. Some guy made this app where you and your friends get together and it counts your steps. I don't know if it's doing it through like Apple Health. And what it is, it's like a daily race to see like who can count the most steps. And like, okay, so that's already kind of like some Fitbit like experience. But then he takes it a step further and he gives everybody avatars. So they all have like these goofy avatars. So it's already hilarious, right?
Yeah.
And then he takes another step further where you pick up items, and then when you cross somebody, you can use your item. So it's like if you cross somebody, if you catch up somebody, you can like hit them with a baseball bat, right?
Yeah.
And that's when you start to feel like you're getting away with something, because you're getting your steps in, you're getting lean, but you're also like hitting your friend with a baseball bat. How much more hilarious and amazing can you get than that?
Yeah, you're like red shelling them or blue shelling them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally.
That's awesome. I love it. To bring us back on track a little, another one I want to talk about is pricing. This is a really similar category to ads. I think you're going to hear us kind of hitting on a lot of the same notes, but I think it's helpful to really drive this home. Is when Taylor and I were first working on Dribble and we were first launching our paywall, Taylor was like, okay, what is the most I feel like we can quote unquote get away with charging? And he's like, okay, well, Netflix costs this much. I get a lot of value. So what percentage of that value could Dribble Game provide to a user? That's the like most percentage we could charge. And that just...
And you guys found out that it just doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah. So we started with, I think we were $3 a month was our entry price. And then we ratcheted it to $4 a month. Basically no fall off in conversions, a little bit, barely any. Then we ratcheted to $5 a month. Almost no fall off in conversions. And now we've essentially ratcheted to $8 a month because our flagship offering is weekly at $2 a week. So that's like an $8 a month equivalent. And before anybody says, oh my God, you're scamming your users, we put the monthly equivalent price in there. We show it to you. We are not scamming you. We're not lying to you. You are making a conscious decision to pay $2 a week instead of $5 a month. But all the same, it's like you can just keep ratcheting the price up. The price you can get away with for your product is the price that people will pay for your product. And it's not worth predicting.
It's so boring. It's so boring, but it's like so true.
Yeah, just do it. Just do it and find out. It's a little annoying running pricing experiments, to be honest, but the returns are so big. Like we're probably making somewhere around, it's hard to estimate the counterfactual because of course we haven't been running these A/B tests this whole time in parallel. Once it's clear it's better, we just kill the old A format. But I'm estimating we're probably making about double what we'd be making if we'd stuck with our original pricing.
As a note to people, this is the beauty. If your app can do weekly subscriptions with a 3-day trial, this is the beauty of that because you get data back on trial conversions and retention so fast. And you can start ratcheting up and down your price and like changing things. And you get your data back almost immediately to make sure that like the changes that you're making are actually having positive outcomes on your revenue.
Yep. Yeah, that was one of our biggest mistakes with trials. Our trial was 7 days. Just because that felt like a clean, even number. And that really hurt our ability to iterate because that's just way too long of a lag period on feedback. So we were getting all these early trial conversions. And it's like, oh my God, we're top of world. We're about to make $1 billion. And then a week later, we're like, 3% of people converted. That sucks.
Yeah. The other thing about the Netflix comparison that I don't think people understand is they always think like, okay, here's this product, it's Netflix. People are getting this much. Now here's my product. It's like a tiny fraction of what Netflix provides, so we'll price it at a tiny fraction. The problem here is that with an app, especially like Casey's, where it's such like a deep niche brand in the NBA space, that people who use it, they probably feel seen while they're using it. Like it really resonates with them. And like people don't feel seen when they use Netflix. Right?
Yep.
Like that's the way I experience it. Like Netflix is just like a cart for entertainment, right? But something like Casey's app where it's just such deep niche that people like really connect with it, and that increases the multiple. And that's why like a little niche mobile app can charge more money than Netflix, basically.
Yeah, and I think people love feeling like they're on the inside. I love your framing of feeling seen. Like we try to throw basketball references into the app in different places just to make somebody say, oh, I get it. And these guys get me. Like we're all in on a joke together. My favorite one by far is going back years. Taylor has slipped like hidden Kendall Jenner references into the app. Yep. The original one was he had a daily puzzle for the app where it's like connect these 2 basketball players with mutual teammate. And the like hidden theme was all the mutual teammates had dated Kendall Jenner.
That's hilarious. That's a perfect example.
Wait. It gets way better. Here's the punchline. So it was roughly a year anniversary from when he launched that original puzzle with the hidden theme that a couple people even called out on Twitter like, oh, I got it. That's awesome. And added him on Twitter about it. Well, about a month ago, we did like the anniversary version of that puzzle. And we added Kendall Jenner as a player on our backend database and gave her teammate relations to those 2 players. So if you typed Kendall Jenner into the text box,
it would count.
She would show up and you could select her as a winning guess. And then we thought it was so funny, we just left her in. So now all of our game modes, it's like she's never included up front in a puzzle, but in any game mode, you can type Kendall Jenner in and try to make a guess. And the hilarious part is she retains those teammate relationships. So we're no longer like making any puzzles that willfully funnel you into that outcome. But if you know about the Easter egg, you can leverage her in puzzle solutions.
Yeah, this is amazing. This is both feeling seen and also feeling like you're getting away with something.
Yep.
Right? It's like the perfect example of both of those things.
Yeah, the best part is I have fun. Like that's one of the funnest things I've done with this app by far. And it was almost no dev effort. Like the The fun
It's
to
literally like
effort
one
ratio.
database record, right?
Yeah, off the charts fun to effort
Yeah.
ratio. Another one I love to
Amazing.
do that users really seem to like, and we're getting a little off theme, but I think we can still call this something that people don't expect, is every time there's a holiday, I superimpose a holiday themed hat over all the basketball players in the app for like a week. So
Yeah.
I originally got the idea from your Twitter avatar because you put a
Oh, that's
Santa
funny.
hat over your Twitter
Yeah.
avatar. So then I put Santa
I think it's
hats.
still there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're still Santa. I put Santa hats over all the basketball players. And I had like a big like snowflake icon that appeared in the upper corner, and you could like toggle it by tapping the snowflake. And especially our super fans love this. And then they'll like tell me what holidays they want to see, and I'll ask them like, okay, what hat are we doing? My favorite holiday so far has been Easter because I put
Yeah.
Easter like very, very silly Easter bunny ears over all the players. And it's just so fun to see this super serious basketball player who's really cool.
Easter bunny ears, yeah.
Bunny ears over his head.
It's so funny.
Yeah, stupid stuff like that makes me happy, and it seems to make users happy. So hey, win-win-win here.
Win, win, win. That's right. But getting back to the original concept, I think what people have a hard time with is that they really need to optimize for trial starts. That has been in my experience, and I know that Casey had like a little bit different experience with his offering, but I think as a general rule, it's fair to say that whatever you can do to inspire a trial start is going to give you more revenue.
Let me generalize that a little bit. I would say
Sure.
if you think you have low-hanging fruit in your system, it can be overwhelming because you have like 30 good ideas and you have no idea which one will be most effective, and it's hard to evaluate this. This is the trap I fall into. So you get the galaxy brain, numbers flying through the air, you build a spreadsheet, Gantt chart, blah, 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 you estimate effort, you t-shirt size it. Wrong way, don't do this. Instead, just go to the top of funnel. And this applies to your trial starts. It's like, it doesn't matter how much logic you apply. If you have 10 plausibly good ideas, the ones that are highest in the funnel have by far the highest potential. And if you did your analysis right, you would come to that conclusion because you would realize, okay, let's look at the counterfactuals. How will this boost conversions? Okay, does boosting conversions at this point affect the whole funnel? Well, at the top, you get a huge multiplier effect. So if you do your like deep analysis, you're going to come to the same conclusion. But in practice, it's really easy to screw up the deep analysis. So don't be the midwit. Just be the Jedi and just do the top of funnel. And in your case, this is going to be trial conversions. But just it's the top of funnel stupid can apply to a bunch of different things in a bunch of different contexts. And it's just a really, really good rule of thumb that really helps you bypass analysis paralysis and especially bypass analysis mistakes. Because I did that spreadsheet chart with the effort, the expected returns, blah, blah, blah. I didn't do it right. I didn't account for the correct multipliers. And in hindsight, after I run a bunch of different projects over months, I'm like, oh, the top of funnel stuff won. Why didn't I just do the top of funnel stuff from the start?
Yeah. And then as we're talking about this, I'm becoming more and more convinced that I'm going to try this out, that the next biggest lever you can pull is just win back in the first 5 minutes. And what I mean by that is people always think of win back. The idea of win back is somebody's like a potential customer or churned, and then you have to win them back so that they start paying, after that first touch point. So when I say when people think of win back, they always think of like, okay, we're going to collect emails, we're going to put them in a drip campaign, we're going to try to win them back over email after they've quit the app, after they've deleted the app. But I'm going to suggest that probably the best time to do win back is in the first 5 minutes. And so a good example of this would be somebody opens the app, you show a paywall, they don't convert. So then you're going to try to win them back at the end of your onboarding flow with another paywall. And if they don't convert then, and they go to try to like delete the app, then you try to win them back a third time in those app actions. So it shows like we have a special offer for you right next to the delete button. And so that I would describe as win back in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah. And I think the first 5 minutes is in keeping with our go up the funnel. If you're doing a drip campaign, like that's going to be way bottom of funnel. You're going to hit this person after they bounced for any indeterminate amount of time. Who knows? Just go to the point where they churned and hit them at that point where they churned. Points of high leverage. It's a much, much higher leverage point when you get them in the in-app actions than when you get them in like a drip feed email.
Yep. Oh, and then there's actually a fourth touch point I just realized for win back, which is if they close the app, then you could have already have scheduled a local notification to then give them an offer code in local notifications, and that would be before they try to delete it. So there's actually 3 places you can do a win back after showing your first paywall in the first 5 minutes of somebody who's just basically on a plane pointed straight down to like deleting your app, basically.
Yep. Yeah, let's see. Here's another one that you and I know are really struggling with how to solve, and that's reviews and ratings for ASO. That's another place where people's intuitions, I don't think, work, where they're not optimizing for top of funnel enough, where what you and I have both settled on is just show them the native review modal right after on. And they're like, wait, why would somebody ever 5-star an app they haven't meaningfully used yet? Well, they're at this point of hype, and also they just want to dismiss the modal. They don't really care at this point. They're slightly hyped, but for the most part, they don't care. The one theory I heard, I have no idea if this is true, is that a user who doesn't care will often click 5 stars to dismiss, just because 5 stars is closest to a right-handed person's thumb on the screen.
That's so
than
funny.
1 star. I have no idea if that's true, but I love that theory. But the general point is like, nah, just show the 5-star review modal sooner. And don't do this like, hey, are you enjoying the app or not? Just hit them with the review modal. And the point is just push it higher up the funnel and you're going to get more conversions. The caveat here is you and I each have a competitor that's way, way crappier than us, at least in terms of looking at their offering. It doesn't feel as exciting. It doesn't feel as premium, but they're slaughtering us on reviews. I have Sport Tricks, which is this like super sloppy app that just murders me on reviews. They have like 1,900 reviews. I have like 800. And I think there are tricks you and I haven't figured out yet. I'm actually going to put a call to action here in the podcast. Please at me and Luke with your review tricks. We'd love to hear them, and then we can report back what we tried and what works, because that is like a
we should do a like dedicated episode on this because reviews are so critical and it's an area that I need to improve.
Yeah, how about let's ask folks on Twitter, do some polling, and have people reach out to us, collect a bunch of ideas, run the experiments, and then we can report back and tell people how it went.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. One thing I will say, just real quick about the gating, is that I think people gate because they're worried that somebody's going to rate something other than 5 stars. But the way I've explained this to myself is that after they first download the app, they're excited, they go through onboarding, then they see the native modal. There's 2 outcomes that seem to be the predominant outcome. The first one is that they just rate 5 stars because they're excited, or maybe it's easier. But then the people who are actually really thoughtful and they're like, oh, well, I don't really know what this app is yet, I'm not going to rate it. They don't rate 1 star. They just hit the cancel button.
Yep.
And then wait to like rate it later. So my take is that in that onboarding flow, the 2 overwhelmingly predominant outcomes is a 5-star rating or dismissing the modal. Yep. And so it's like basically no risk, all upside. Yeah. And we had a friend who actually had like a TikTok event where they had like thousands of installs across a couple days, and they had like a buried rating system, or they had like a buried rating modal. And the point I was making, I was like, you know, if you had just Grug Brain like ask them to rate 5 stars after onboarding, and let's say they converted 5%, like how many more ratings do you think you would have right now? And it was like a lot more ratings.
Yep. We had a viral moment too, and I think this is a great argument in favor of Grug Brain. Our viral moment was like 5-6 months ago now, and we hit 10,000 DAOs on our best day with $750 revenue that day. I don't have the exact hard numbers, but I'm pretty sure we would have hit about $4,000 that day if we had the app we have now then. And almost every single change between now and then was a Grug Brain. Yeah. It was put the thing higher up in the funnel with less clicks, raise the price, play more ads.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have any more to cover? I feel like those are the big ones you and I have run into.
I've got a ton of stuff to talk about, but we should wrap this episode up because it's on topic and it's about 40 minutes long.
Hey guys, just a closing note from Casey here. Luke and I are going to be running some experiments with maximizing 5-star reviews in our apps, and we'd love to hear what kind of tips and tricks you guys have for us for that. So please send those our way on Twitter at KCC Rogers and at Luke_Paghetti. And we're going to take a look at those, try them out, and see how it goes, and report back to you guys an episode dedicated on getting reviews in about a month or so. Thanks for listening.